Good afternoon and welcome to Willow's Green Permaculture. My name is Stephen Dixon and today I've got some stories to tell. Did you know that you can use plants as trellises to support your other plants so they can keep standing? Join me today as I transplant a whole bunch of different types of sorghum and millet and barley and various other plants, and I give you some gardening advice along the way. If this is something you're interested in, then let's get started. So here I'm standing just behind my coral sorghum, millet, and amaranth bed that I've been putting the last several years. I started it. It's right beside a little tiny pond that we have here behind me. So it takes advantage of all the water. And a little bit of an idea that shows you that we got this little pond here. We've got some cattails here. I don't know if you can see the cattails behind me. And the cattails, by the way, are one of those plants you can use as a trellis. There's nothing that'll knock them over, and so they'll hold your other plants up. I've spoken to you about using lettuce and dill for trellises for your tomatoes. If you haven't heard explain that, then I'll put the video up here. You can have a look at that. How would lettuce act as a trellis for tomatoes? Anyway, dill for that matter. So here, I added a few things this year. In the past, it's only been coral sorghum, millet, and coral sorghum in the back, millet in the front, and amaranth on either side to frame it. Now I'm still going to have the amaranth on either side to frame it. It's not ready to transplant, so I've got the spaces marked out just on the outside of these two poles here that I'm going to remove when I put in the amaranth. Is just going to be on the outside of it. I'm going to put 2 or 3 plants on either side. Now what I've noticed in the past is the millet's been great for holding up the coral sorghum in the back, because millet's shorter, so it's less prone to fall over than the sorghum is. But the millet that's down in front, let's say, some of it would fall over. And so I'd have to put up stuff like these things in front of it so it doesn't fall over. And I'd rather not have to do that, because I'd rather not have to spend those couple hours finding where they are in the various gardens, so I can quote unquote steal them from those other parts of the garden to use them here. I'd rather the millet just be able to stand up on its own. I still have 2 rows of coral sorghum here, and then after that I've got coral sorghum and foxtail millet staggered in a 3rd row, and then in the 4th row I've got 2 rows of 4th and 5th rows. 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 2 rows of pure millet, just millet, and then down in front of the millet I've got a bunch of kale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 kales. Yep. Oh, 8 kales. 8 kales down front. Laciniato kale that should grow really tall. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Swiss chards, which also go really tall and are really strong. They generally don't fall over. And then I've got a whole bunch of barley down. So I had 7 leftover cells of barley, so they're down front in the middle here. And the barley, it's all the kale, the Swiss chard, and the barley will all start off eventually shorter than the millet. And then only when the millet is done will the Swiss chard and the kale be almost as tall as the millet. So it'll be just perfect to hold the millet up while it's got all those tassels hanging over, and that's when it generally falls, especially on a rainy or windy day. So they'll help it hold it up just in time, and beforehand they won't be hiding anything. And so that's how kale, Swiss chard are being used as trellises here. And then the little bit of barley there, well, you know what, I find that because it's shorter, it doesn't tend to fall over as much as something like a millet or a sorghum. There you go. In fact, for sorghum, it's so common that it can fall over. There's a term for it, technical sorghum related term for it. Can't remember what it is. I'm sure one of you out there know it. I've seen it on website in videos before. It's starts with a T, but I'm not sure. The term for sorghum fallen over. I just wonder why they don't just use the term fallen over, but anyway, that's language. Diversity and the complexity of language is wonderful. Now I'm going to take you back to yesterday when I was so here was coral sorghum, millet, barley, kale, and Swiss chard. And now we're going to add, of course, these cattails that'll help hold up the millet and the sorghum. Actually, there are a couple in the middle here. There's one here, and there's another really small one over there somewhere. I can't see it anymore. It's right down front, I think. I've got something planted right in front of it. Anyway, most of them are over here. I've got little red ants biting me all over the place. Anyways, we're going to go back to yesterday when I was transplanting some popping sorghum, some more coral sorghum, and millet, and barley, and some other stuff. Haven't yet done the Williams sorghum. That'll maybe be for another video. And some other things that I've been doing the last few days. It's May 29th today, I think it is. I know the date on my phone there. So pretty soon it's going to be time for the beans, the peppers, the tomatoes, the loofah, and and the sweet potatoes, transplanting all that. Not yet. Finish up with all the sorghum, and then I'll think about all that other stuff. Peppers right now is what's hardening off. That's going to be what's going to follow the sorghum, millet, the peppers, and also I've got some broccoli and cauliflower hardening off, which I'm going to plant back here also beside the pond, because I find that broccoli, cabbage, and cauliflower tolerate long bouts of no rain. And so even if we don't get rain, because we're right beside the pond here, those plants will be able to continue growing their roots even if we don't go rain, so it gets down deep enough to access that water that's a little bit further down below. And once those plants have accessed that water, then doesn't matter if we get rain or no rain, they're going to be just fine. Okay, I got to get out of this. Oh my goodness, I'm kneeling on an ant hill. Red ants, little red ants, little fire ants. Oh. Well, I got my formic acid dose for a day. Okay, come on, guys. I'm not invading your ant hill. I leave you guys alone. We protect most of our ant hills. We just leave them alone and we just work around them. Okay. Hello there. No, don't go into the pots. Hello. Go hide somewhere. And then for your trees, you use certain plants to keep them healthy. Got a little magnolia tree here, which is a little bit further north than what its northern limit, you might say. It's in its second year. I'm really hoping that it grows well. And what I've got planted around it is little walking onions, which are bigger than it is. And some chamomile I just transplanted, which will be perennial, but it won't get taller than the current size of the magnolia, which will be just nice. Just the flowers maybe, but we'll often harvest those anyway. And then on either corner we've got some Swiss chard, which gets pretty big. We'll be at a harvest, and it's also really pretty. You just saw me talk about this garden. Now let's talk about this one. This was an experiment I did last year where I put about 3 bales of straw. I can't remember how many bales of straw I put there, but anyway. And I planted carrots and onions in them directly. And here are some of those onions and carrots that came back this year. Because what happened was, I don't water here, and I figured with all, the water in the pond over there, I'd be okay. But last summer we had, I think it was 3 months with no rain. And so everything that dried up completely. It always does dry up in July, but everything became dry as bone, and so we didn't get too much of a carrot harvest in here or an onion harvest. We did get some, but a whole bunch of the onions dried up before even harvesting, and so they dried up and kind of just hid in the straw, and they came back this year. So we'll either get seed from them. These are some nice red onions, or we'll get onions. We'll see which. And we got some carrots that came back, and I'm hoping to get some nice carrot seed. I'm hoping these go to flower before the Queen Anne's lace, the wild carrot, does. So what I've put in here, if you haven't guessed already, is some buckwheat. And because the straw bales collapsed under the bit of compost that I put on top and other stuff, now it's much more compact, almost as low as the rest of, the garden. Not quite as low as the pond behind, but these should be fine this year. With the space in the back left over, I'm going to put some hulless oats. My hose doesn't come back this far, and that's why it was a problem last year here with the drought, because it's just hand watering, and I'm only watering for the transplant. Maybe 1 or 2 other times in the next couple weeks, and that's it. Just thinned out these ground cherries. Probably thinned out at least this many plants, more than this many plants. And look what's growing at their base. More ground cherries. Look at those. I don't know how many. Sometimes I don't pay attention to the seeds I put in. Oh, the ground cherry seeds are so tiny. Probably wasn't wearing my glasses. May 26th today, and in the little woodland in front, just beside our garden here, look what I just found here on one of these stumps. Oh, this isn't even a stump, it's a cut piece of trembling aspen. This is a pleurotus mushroom, type of oyster mushroom that's being protected by these woodland poppies, native flower. These are growing right beside our trillium, which are all done for the year. Here they are. And our Dutchman's breeches, they're all done for the year too. Spring ephemerals. So I'm gonna harvest this carefully, just by breaking it off. There we go. Gently. Gently, gently. There we go. Normally, it'd be easier to do this with a knife, but I don't carry a knife around with me. I'd end up losing it. Got already too many things in my little basket of tools. It's May 27th today, 2 days after I transplanted this cabbage and dill. I only watered it when I transplanted it, not since, and we haven't had any rain since either. It's been hot and dry, but they're doing well. I may come back later with a bucket so I can fill it with that water and water with this. But considering how hot and dry it's been, these are looking really good. Really, really good. It's about between 12 and 1 in the afternoon right now. In the next few days, I'm gonna get this garden ready, which is right next to the chinampa and to these guys, which are also on top of the old chinampa. May 27th, 2025, maybe for a video for next year. This is the stinging nettle patch after I went over it with this. I went over it twice with this battery powered tiller. It's a nice light tiller, no gas, works well. I only do it in the areas where I have mint and stinging nettle, where I want to plant and where I want the mint and stinging nettle to come back, because all those root pieces are just going to grow again, but it's going to take them the whole time I grow something else for them to come back again. One thing I didn't mention in the last video about this chinampa is You might say, well, why don't you just put compost instead of all these weeds? Rather than putting all these weeds mixed with leaves and compost, and you know, a little bit of the whatever dirt that comes out of the garden with the weeds and the leaves, if I just put compost or earth, it would just fall through very quickly the layers beneath. And so it's all that root structure and all that organic structure in the leaves and the weeds roots and so on that are going to hold that soil on top so that I can plant in it. Because most of the weeds are not going to survive this cooking. Anything I protect with a thick layer, that's what'll survive and grow underneath all the layer of leaves. Like for example, right now I've found 3 or 4 potatoes that are green. Here they are. We've had 2 days of dry weather, but there's one. There's another one. So I've just protected them a little. Third one right there, and it looks like there's an onion right over there. And there'll be more. There'll be more. A dozen beans that overwintered here, hanging in their bean pod, that I'm going to plant today, May 27th, right here. I haven't planted the beans here yet. We'll see if these come up before I plant the actual beans in a few days. The ones that, you know, that have been indoors. Here they are. Now I'll just push them in. I feel the weeds under the soil that can make it sometimes a little harder to push the beans in, but there's enough compost here for the beans to grow. There we go. All done. Now we just need some rain. This is what the beans look like when they've been left hanging all winter. These are some beans that just weren't ripe enough and looked like they were starting to even rot on the vine, so I just left them there through the winter. So let's have let me show you what it looks like inside. Just break this up. Oops, dropped a couple, but that's okay. Here we go. So you see, I wouldn't eat these, but certainly will try and plant them. Got a whole bunch here, so I'm just gonna throw these on the ground. Still have to prepare this spot. This is our turtle garden. Pretty sure I'm gonna have broom corn around the outside, broom corn sorghum around both sides here. Well, three of the 4 sides, and then inside the 3 sisters. I love using these hooks that have this little lock on them. Watch. Just pull it. There. No matter how loose your gate is, it's going to be held in place because of that little simple little lock, simple little $1.50 hook, $2.50 hook or something. The garden on May 27th. Hard to see, but there are lots of potatoes coming up through there. May 27th. Here's our barley. Starting to transplant it. This is what the roots look like. They hold the soil together and it's nice and tall. Now the sorghum's not as tall, it grows more slowly, but I'm going to transplant it too if the roots look like this. It's going to go behind. My dwarf sorghum is going to go just behind the barley because it's just a little bit taller. When your roots look like this, you can have confidence your plant's going to keep standing even when you water it. Another thing I'd like to show you, as you can see, my cells had varying numbers of plants, from 1 plant and 2 plants to many plants. You know, I wasn't very careful putting in the seeds. I basically put in lots of seeds and sometimes maybe not so many, but I just wanted to make sure that if they didn't all sprout, we'd still have lots. And the thing is, barley, just like all the other grains, sorghum, wheat, millet, oats, it's all grass. And so grass likes company. Grass likes to grow with anything, and but it takes up the space. But when it's growing with itself, it just loves it. I've never experienced having much smaller heads or even smaller seed heads when I've grouped all the grains together like this. I find they grow really well crowded. And you know, when you're doing it by hand and without machinery, then you can afford to make it all crowded and do intensive planting and get more for the small spaces that you use. There is half a flat of barley. Here's the other half right there. Planted nice and close together, intensive planting in a small area, maybe 3 square feet, maybe a bit more. Looks really nice. It's gonna look really nice when it's grown. Here's my dwarf sorghum. Looks a little small for my liking for transplanting, but if the roots are strong, I'm gonna do it. So I'm gonna have a look in a second. The roots could be better, but I'm gonna go ahead and plant these. The green cabbage and onions, I believe it was May 25th I transplanted them. Maybe it was the 24th. And there's our first bunch of purple barley and dwarf sorghum. Homegrown seed collected from the dwarf sorghum that Robert Resnick had sent me last year. Although I still have some seeds that he sent me, and they're also going to be planted at some point. It's May 27th today. I'm not a huge fan of paper pots, although that might change this year. However, one advantage I've noticed is it's really easy to tell if the root section of the plant has got moisture or not, because if the exterior of the pot is damp, then you can bet the interior is damp. And because the roots attach themselves to the paper pot, if the paper pot gets gets dry, well, then you need to water. And that's one of the disadvantages of this. They dry up really quickly and easily, so you have to pay attention, because you can kill your plants pretty fast with these. However, the main advantage is being able to transplant into the ground without pulling these out of their pots. I am always accompanied by frogs and toads when I'm in the garden. This one was just disturbed while I was transplanting something, poor thing. I put this wild raspberry root there, so if he or she wants to hide under it, go ahead. And I directed him to the shade along the fence line. There's all sorts of weeds and taller plants that you can hide in. Something I love to see as I walk through the forest are the hundreds of ostrich ferns that we have here. We actually have 3 or 4 different types of ferns, but one of them, and the biggest one by far, is the ostrich. Here's another type we have everywhere. And sometimes where you can find ostrich ferns growing in the forest, something else you find is beautiful purple stem angelica. This plant becomes gigantic, 7 or 8 feet tall sometimes, with big blue beautiful flowers. Make sure you don't mix it up with hogweed and other stuff like that though. This is purple stem angelica. May 28th today, and yesterday I transplanted a bunch of dwarf sorghum and barley in the back end of the garden, Now I'm transplanting some more sorghum and foxtail millet here in the main round part of the garden. I've already done some coral sorghum right up to here and some popping sorghum here. In front of it, I'm gonna put dwarf sorghum and foxtail millet, staggered. Foxtail millet, dwarf sorghum, foxtail millet, dwarf sorghum, etc. all the way along here. And actually I've got some original seeds from Robert Resnick's dwarf sorghum, which I'm gonna put in front on the sunny side of the homegrown, because I don't know if my homegrown dwarf sorghum seed crossed with the other types of sorghum or not. And if it did, maybe it'll be a bit taller. I don't know. We will see. That's why I'm putting the original seeds in front of the original plants from the... Okay, let's go. Here's the foxtail millet plants. And here are the dwarf sorghum plants. I sowed them in the greenhouse on May 5th. It's May 28th today, so it's only been, well, it's been 3 weeks and a couple days. Okay, let's go. Now, even though the foxtail millet, the plants are smaller, I expect them to be taller than the dwarf sorghum, because foxtail millet is pretty tall. Not as tall as regular sorghum though. Lots of plants in each cell, tons of them. And the roots are really nice. And framing all of this sorghum millet on either end is going to be elephant head amaranth, a dark red burgundy amaranth, which is really beautiful. I love these rubber boots I have because I can sit on my heels comfortably. I find my seedlings do better when there are lots of them in a single tray, or in a single cell. Better than when they're all alone in a cell. They come out easily because I actually tilled this area because of the thickness of the netting of roots of the nettles. I wonder why maybe that's why they're called singing nettles, because the roots are like a real thick net. Hot day out, but these seedlings are strong. Can handle it. They're hardened off. Handle this sun. I love using this wand. Nothing special about it. Not one of those pistols with all sorts of different settings. Those are complicated for nothing. This one I just control it, how much water comes out, so it's either stronger or weaker. And just because of how long it is, I can reach right down and just water the roots. Water's a little hot there. Don't burn my roots. I can feel if it's hot right here. Okay. It's cool now. It's gonna look so pretty when it's all done, growing. The thing about these wands is they're not complicated technology, so they're very, very reasonably priced. Not like those fancy garden pistols. They make them look so fancy, but they end up breaking because of the mechanical aspect of, you always turn it and stuff. When you're designing your garden, one thing you want to think about is how wide your paths are, so that you have room to do things like kneel down like this and your boots aren't crushing the plants in behind. This is the easiest part because behind me are big, huge plants that couldn't get crushed by my boots anyway. And if I wanted to. Nettles, roots everywhere, and some raspberry too, wild raspberry that I've got on the outside here protecting the garden with its thorns. Commercial farmers would say I'm planting these way too close together. They'll say I'm gonna have smaller seed heads. Well, it's all right. I haven't noticed that though in the past, but I've compared it to what I've seen online and stuff. They seem all right. And I don't use machinery, so smaller the space, the better for me. Okay. These plants look the same, and I have to concentrate so I don't get my staggering off. I'm almost to the end of the row here. Nice. Finish off with foxtail millet because that's what I started off with over there. The last couple of cells I get a bit closer together. Roots out of there. Even though I pull out as many roots as I can, this is going to be filled with stinging nettle next spring. And the stinging nettle will have come back by the fall. But it won't disturb this sorghum or the millet. Anyway, it didn't last year. Grow, but a while for these roots to take root again. That's going to be there. Wasn't such a strong one, but all right. keep my tags so that what's left over, I know what it is. I like staggering because it looks pretty. My gardens aren't only for feeding us, and not only for feeding nature, they're also for being pretty. Sure, but I might do a third row because too much space left for the barley that I have. Barley's small. I'll just do single. No, I'll do 2 rows. I don't need that much space. Some of the cells that have fewer plants than others, well, that means those plants maybe will get bigger seed heads or grow bigger as plants. We'll see. You never know. It could be the opposite because they'll have more weed pressure on them. You know? It's half a dozen of one and 6 of the other. Yeah, I know I said that backwards. Means the same thing. Pun intended. Look at that. Foxtail millet. Gotta be at least a dozen plants per cell here. Nettles roots. Or maybe it's raspberry root. We also have milkweed here. I'll collect it later and it's all going out to the chinampa where it's going to live again. There's some plants you can stick them on asphalt for a week and they won't die. When I advise people if they have invasive stuff, they should dry it well. You need to dry it for at least a month. I remember when I was a teacher, the neighbors of a school I taught at, for about 2 weeks they had thrown out a whole bunch of daylilies on their curb. It's on my bike to go to school and my bicycle. And I'd see that every day. I want those. I can't carry them on my bike. I'll kill them. But then I saw them as they just stayed on the curb for 2 weeks and they weren't dying. Well, they were stressed, obviously. I grab them. Threw them in my pannier. Threw them in a bag, threw them in my pannier. Took them home, planted them. They were growing within a few days. So happy. Oh, here's some stinging nettle right here. Don't feel like going to look for some burdocks. I'm going to use my glove to pull this. Get it all. That's fine. Thank you, stinging nettle, for your energy and your healing powers. The healthiest plant on the planet, stinging nettle. Got a few videos about that. Stone. What do you think about the idea of doing an unedited video? It's going to be long. It won't be longer than an hour though, so I'll just cut it at some point. When an hour's up, it's cut. There's some obvious long spots where I'm not really talking and there's no bird song or anything. Well, maybe I'll cut those out if I get a chance. But it'll stop at an hour. so that at least what I do say can get dubbed. And because more than an hour it doesn't get dubbed. Yeah, let me know what you think about the idea of unedited videos from time to time. You get to see another angle of things. Not so worried about the efficiency. Yeah, backing into the garden here. Boots. Okay. Get to see another angle, less formal angle, and sort of other ideas. You've probably noticed I've been expanding into other ideas. Big root here. There we go. Yeah, that's nettle. Believe me, even though I'm pulling all these out, it's all going to be back. All of it. Okay. Not before these get a chance to grow. Especially because I'm transplanting them. Last year I direct sowed my popping sorghum into here, if I recall. I think I did anyway. I certainly I can't remember anymore. I'd have to check. But it grew well. And the seed I collected is all back here in these plants. Okay. Let's see. My last full tray of 1, 2, 3. Okay, good. Where's my trowel? Just used it. There it is, under the tray. Okay, let's just stick in nettle here. I also have to be careful that the stinging nettle doesn't spread into the rest of the garden. That's why I don't mind doing this once a year. Although next year things are going to be different, but I'm going to explain that later. There's going to be some very interesting changes happening in these gardens next year. As far as I'm concerned, changes for the better. Love how we're doing it, but it's always good to try different things. But give you a clue. This section with the stinging nettles, probably just gonna, probably just gonna let the stinging nettles have it. That's a clue what's going on here this year. We'll see. Might not. We'll see. I've seen people using sort of like plug machines to plug their plants into the ground, but I like to be able to touch it, feel what's under there. One of those plug machines, you won't feel the the roots of the weeds. Of course, those plug machines are probably used with completely, totally tilled soil and all the rest of it. Probably nothing in there anyway, so not here. Here things are different. So I give the plants. Oops. It's here. Okay, I'm talking too much. Distracting myself. Almost put the war sorghum where the millet was supposed to go.
The front row are staggered barley and marigolds.
Next day, this area is now done. All I had to do was add the 2 Cattails and the 3 Amaranth to border either end of all this sorghum and barley and millet. The Amaranth and 2 Kale. They're going to make a pretty frame. There we go. And it's a bit of a rain is starting, which is nice. Hard to believe this was full of stinging nettle, and it still is full of stinging nettle. It'll come back by the fall. If you live in a cool climate and you have a short season, don't direct sow your sorghum. I mean, we're the May 30th today, and the soil is likely still too cold for the sorghum. It needs to be around, I believe it's 10 degrees Celsius, the soil. At least, minimum. Still had lows below 10 degrees Celsius, which means the soil is likely no higher than that, and maybe it's not even that. And you see these little plants here are about 4 weeks old. So look at how big they are already. And it's warm enough for the plants to grow. They're fine in the cooler temperatures to grow, but not to germinate. And they take a long time. They took 4 weeks to germinate and get to that height. Now, if I were to wait for another week before I sowed them, say the end of the first week of June, then they wouldn't look that way until into the first week of July, maybe. And by that time, the weeds that I all got rid of, I'd be having to work a long time to get rid of all those weeds while they're growing to that size. But I got rid of all the weeds already. And look at how big they are. And they're at a size that they're going to grow quickly now, which means the weeds don't really stand a chance. They'll eventually come back, but by the end of the season, when all these plants are really big, and the weeds won't bother them at all. And what I mean by weeds in here is stinging nettle. And we're going to be happy to have that back in the fall. I hope you liked the video. Hope you learned something from it and you found it useful. If you liked it, then please give it a thumbs up. And please share it with a friend. And don't forget to leave a comment or a question. I answer them all. And if you need plants, if you're local to my area, you know, within an hour or whatever, and you'd like to come and buy some plants and check out our website, see what's there. And what we have on offer in plants and pots. And we got native plants, we got herbs, we got vegetable starts. We probably have about 300 of them available right now. And of course, if you need seeds, well, you can get those too. At the moment, we deliver all over the United States and Canada. And if you're from somewhere else and you'd like to buy seeds and you know that it's possible that for seeds to be delivered to your country from another country, then let me know and I can activate your country on our website for the delivery. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for being here with me. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you next time.